Algebra 1, factorizing expressions 1. It reads, when factorizing expressions, you are basically placing terms outside, then inside brackets by dividing coefficients and subtracting powers. So basically, these are the operations you'll be doing when you are factorizing. You'll be dividing coefficients. A coefficient is a number that is in front of a variable, and subtracting powers. Before we move on, let's clarify the difference between an expression and an equation. On the expressions for this website, you have true for all values of x, common key terms, simplify, expand, factorize. So the command you will be given with regards to expressions most likely are to simplify them, expand them, and factorize them. And here you have an example, 8x plus 5y minus 3x minus 5. So if you notice, this expression does not have any equal sign. It's like an expression. Now with an equation now, it says true for some values of x, common key terms, solve. So you will be, with regards to an equation, you will be asked to solve an equation. And here you have an example, 5x minus 4 is equal to. So equations have the equal sign. So let's just take a look at the parts of an expression. So it is clear that an equation consists of two expressions on either side of an equal sign. So it will be good to know what are the parts of an expression. So if you take a look at this diagram very quickly, you'll see that expressions have coefficients. The coefficient now is the number multiplying to the letter. The letter is called a variable. So the letters in an expression are called variables, and the numbers multiplying to them, the numbers on the left side or on the right side of them multiplying, they are called coefficients. And any number by itself is called a constant. Now, you have what you call a term. So a combination of numbers and letters multiplied is called a term. So 2x is called a term. It has a coefficient and it has a variable. Multiplying, that's called a term. Terms are separated by plus and negative signs. So here, this expression has three terms. A number by itself can be considered a term. So 2x is a term, 4y is a term, and negative 9 is a term. Actually, this is a slight error. This number is not 9. This is supposed to be negative 9. Bear in mind, whatever you see on the internet is not totally 100% true. This negative sign belongs to the 9. So anywhere you are bringing that 9, anywhere, if you want to shift it anywhere, you have to bring the negative sign with it. So there's a slight error here. That negative sign is supposed to be all where the 9 is. That's not a 9, that's negative 9. And another thing that is not present, that there are what you call powers or indices. So if you don't see a power, there's an invisible 1. So that's actually 2x to the 1. 4y raised to the 1, 9 raised to the 1. So terms have powers also. The letters have powers over them, and that can be considered a term. So we can look at this website to know what are parts of an expression. So in continuation, having clarified what are expressions and what are coefficients, it continues to say whatever you put outside the bracket must interact with all the terms to go inside the brackets. So in a nutshell, whenever you factorize, your final answer must have brackets, must have brackets. And there must be a coefficient outside of the left bracket, most likely. Most times it's outside of the left bracket. It can go on the right, because in maths you can read from right to left. But the majority of the times that coefficient or number or letter, whatever it is, will be outside of a left bracket. And then you have terms inside of the brackets. Now to do this, you have to place outside an open bracket the highest common factor of the numerical coefficients and the letters with the lowest powers. To obtain the terms inside the brackets now, you have to divide each one by what you placed outside the open bracket. So you divide the coefficient numbers. Remember, a negative divided by a positive is a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then you're going to subtract. When you divide the letters, you have to subtract the powers of the identical letters. You do not need to write powers of 1. You can cancel out letters with powers of 0. So anytime you have a power of 0, that's actually 1. So let's go to an example. Here we have an example. Factorize the following expressions. So let's start with E. So as it says now, it says place outside an open bracket the highest common factor of the numerical coefficients. And then we're going to look at the letters. So we're looking at 4 and 12. 4 and 12 are the coefficients. We have to get the highest common factor between 4 and 12. So we're supposed to know about highest common factor, a number that can go into both 4 and 12 without a remainder, the highest one. And obviously, this is 4. So we write down 4. Then we take a look at the letters. With the letters, you can see there are X's and Y's. So let's deal with the X first. It says you have to look at the letters with the lowest power. It will be the highest common factor. You have X cubed and X squared. The highest common factor between X cubed and X squared is X squared. Agreed? Because X squared can go into X squared and X squared can go into X cubed. Okay? X cubed cannot go into X squared because X cubed is more than X squared. So that's why it says, look at the letters, the common letters with the lowest power. So between X cubed and X squared, we have to factor out X raised to the power of 2. Now we look at the y's now. You have y to the 4, y to the 6, y to the 4. Y to the 4 is a lower power. So it is the highest common factor, meaning it can go into. Okay, so always the letter will be, the common letter with the lowest power. It will be the factor. Right. So when you have done, once you have done that now, then you can open a bracket. Okay, remember it says place outside an open bracket. Okay, the highest common factor. So the highest common factor between those two terms is 4x squared and y to the 4. Now, to obtain the terms inside the brackets now, you have to divide each one of the terms by that highest common factor. And if you divide in numbers, yes, you divide in numbers. When you divide in letters with powers, you subtract the powers. So let's do that. So to facilitate the fractional division and for the bracket to expand, I must open and close one time and put the fraction. I'll need 2 fractions. One for the first term, and that's a plus, so I put a plus, and one for the second term. Okay, now it says divide. I must divide by the highest common factor. So I have to divide both terms by 4x squared y to the 4. 4x squared y to the 4. So I have to divide 4x cubed y to the 4 by 4x squared y to the 4. And I have to divide 12 x squared y to the 6 by 4x squared y to the 4. So as it says, you're going to divide the coefficient. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. You don't necessarily have to write a coefficient of 1, but you can. X cubed divided by x squared, we've got to subtract the exponent, subtract the powers. 3 subtract 2 is 1. So this has, x here has an exponent of 1. 4 minus 4 is 0. Y has an exponent of 0. We are simplifying. Let's simplify the order too. 12 divided by 4 is 3. X raised to the 0 because 2 minus 2 is 0. Y raised to the power of 2 because 6 minus 4 is 2. Now this factorization has taken place. So this from here to here, we have factorized. Okay, this is the answer, but this answer is not in the simplest form. Okay, but we have accomplished the mission of factorization. That can serve as an answer. But we know that most times the question asks us to simplify. So a coefficient of 1, you don't have to write it. An exponent of 1, you don't have to write it. And any quantity raised to the power of 0 is 1. Three remains 3. Any quantity raised to the power of 0 is 1. A coefficient of 1, you don't have to write it. So here's a simplified solution of this factorization of this expression, factorization level 1.